Hope you're all doing great. Thank you very much for coming this evening. There's a lot of familiar faces. I always like to find out who's here for their very first time. Welcome. Tell me, how did you find out about us? Well, you have food in your mouth, so. Okay, cool. Well, welcome. And we forgot to run the commercial before so please forgive me for not running the commercial, but we want to thank the project management group for paying for the pizza and setting this all up. And you signed in at the front so that you'll get PDUs. And Kathy takes care of the PDUs, but she told me that she won't be submitting them tomorrow, so it'll be next week. So she's not going to be working tomorrow. And of course, everybody's got Thanksgiving on the mind this week, so I take this opportunity to wish you all a great Thanksgiving. My name is Renee LaBelle. Today is the third Tuesday of the odd month, and I wanted to just point out one little housekeeping thing that some of you have attended the Project Management Symposium that was always in August, and in 2018 it's been moved to May. And there's scheduling issues with the campus, and that's why we're going forward. It will be in May. So if you're interested in doing a abstract and presenting at our symposium in May, the dates are May 17th and 18th. That'll be a Thursday and a Friday. And there's information online about the symposium as well. So, and it's also a wonderful way to get PDUs, so keep that in the back of your mind. And I'm trying to remember if there's anything else I need to tell you. I think I've covered all the news on that. Tonight we have a great speaker, Cary Delmark. He's graciously agreed to take us through this whole web change that's happened over many years. I was speaking with Cary last night. He told me he's a fourth generation Dallasite. He's the first fourth generation Dallasite I've ever met. So that's, I've been here for 25 years in Dallas. There's not a lot of people who have been in Dallas that long. He's graciously volunteers on his daughter's troop as a treasurer, and he does a lot of other activities around town. So I wanted to take this opportunity to welcome Cary.
Thank you, Renee. That was a very nice introduction. It is true. My grandmother can tell you when Loop 12 was a gravel road, and the home that she was born in was torn down to make way for the Dallas Zoo. So we've been here a long time. So I'm Cary. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Web Services, and today I'm talking about a project that we just completed this summer to redesign our magazine's website. And thank you all for coming. I know it's right before Thanksgiving, and we may be thinking about recipes for Thursday, so if I see you looking up recipes on your phone or thinking about your grocery list, I won't be offended because I'm thinking about them too. But thank you for coming. I'm kind of glad it's a small group because I could only round up 22 copies of the magazine. They're a hot commodity. They go quickly. I think we print like 50,000 of them, and I could only find 22, so we had enough for just about everybody. I think it'll make it a better presentation because you can see how the two go together. So my background is I've been here since 2002. I got the opportunity to start the university web services office in 2003 when we didn't have any centralized web development, and the website was a mess. It's been a really neat opportunity. We got to start with 2 web specialists. And the thing I remember from those days, these were 2 entry-level positions, and they told me minimum salary, not $1 above minimum, Cary. You can hire 2, but minimum salary. So that's what we started with in 2003, and today, the university back then was about half the size it is today. It was about 14,000 students. Today, we're at about double that number, and I manage a team of 8, mostly web developers. We have 1 web content editor, 1 manager who oversees our admissions and academics content and special projects, and we have 1 web designer and an administrative assistant who we're pushing to learn HTML. So that's the team. It's 8, and so we'll get into the presentation here. So the history, a little bit about the history of the magazine. So in 2006, we had a new president, Dr. Daniel, and he decided to start a new division. The university didn't really have a communications division here. I predated that by 3 years. We had one marketing person. She was kind of by herself in another unit, and we had a couple of media relations people, and they reported directly to the president. I was in the academic affairs office. So the new president decided to put us all together and start a new division called communications. The university had a magazine way back when called UTD Network, and it was mostly outsourced. It wasn't very good, frankly. It was, any communications professional worth their weight will tell you can outsource a lot of things. You can outsource graphic design, you can outsource printing, you can outsource web development, you can outsource some media relations. The thing you probably shouldn't outsource is the writing, and I think that was true of that old magazine. So it got discontinued at some point. I don't remember who discontinued it or when, because I wasn't part of we didn't really have a communications division, and that was part of the problem. So part of a new division, and we were about 6 to start with. 3 years into it, my boss decides we have got enough staff to do a magazine and to do it well. And up to that point, we were too small. So at that point, she felt like we were big enough, and we hired a managing editor to run it. And so the publication that you hold in your hand was launched. I use the word relaunched here, but it was really, for all intents and purposes, it was new. And this was our first edition. Vivek, I don't know if you were here yet. Fall 2010? Yeah. You were? So this was, if you've been on our magnolia-lined mall outside, this is what it looked like in fall 2010. And this was volume 1, issue 1 of the magazine. One of the things going on in 2010, April of 2010, was the launch of iPad. So this was an interesting year to be launching a website for a magazine. There was a lot of speculation about the iPad, a lot of predictions that it was going to kill textbooks, that magazines were going to not be used anymore, not print magazines, that everything, all the reading was going to go to tablets. We weren't sure what was going to happen. This was our web presence in fall of 2010. We decided to contract with a vendor, Nextbook Media, who's very good, and I would recommend them. I think they do a great job. This is a very cool user interface for the time. You've probably been to something like this. It used to make a cool page-turning sound. Every time you turn the page, I think they got rid of that. So this was nice. You could kind of get around the magazine and see the different pages. So, and they had an iPad app. The company had, and a pretty nice one too. So the cost was very reasonable, and my team was about half the size. I didn't feel like we could carry the magazine in-house, so we contracted with this vendor to do it. I'm going to go with the format of saving questions for the end, because I got a lot of screens loaded up here to show you, but if somebody has a burning question and just feels like you need to ask it right now, let me know. We'll get the microphone over to you. So I think I covered all that. So fast forward to 2015. What I was showing you was basically our platform for 6 years. Our colleagues would come out with a new magazine, and we would update it. We would update one page on the website. It's kind of like a table of contents. We would pick the top 3 articles, and we would link into Nextbook Media's platform. So over those 5 years, smartphones are picking up. Smartphones weren't even a consideration when we started this. In 2010, we weren't using phones like we do today. They were on our radar, but I don't think we had built our first smartphone-friendly web page yet. We were actually paying more attention to tablets. We thought they were more interesting. We didn't see what was coming with the smartphones. At the time, this publication used Adobe Flash, which was fine back then. It also assumed that the user had a mouse, which was, I've been doing web development since '99. For most of those years, we could assume the end users had a mouse. So I want to switch over. I got a little doodad that will let me project my phone, so hopefully the technology will cooperate. There it is. So this is that same interface. Now, 2 years ago, this didn't work at all. If you tried to come to this, you would get a flash warning. You would just get nothing because Apple made the decision to not support Flash. I can't remember how many years ago. This didn't work at all. So this vendor has come back and tried to address that. 2 years ago, there was nothing here. But I'm going to try to get around it. I'm trying to go to the table of contents. And I want to pick a story. So now I'm trying to read those down there. You can already see the trouble I'm having. I'm trying to get over there. I'm being very patient. Now I just clicked one. That actually worked. That was better than my last experience. But you can see the problem. So one of our rules for good web design is the squint test. If you're doing this number at your screen, it's probably not a good design. And there was a lot of that happening. Let me think if there's anything else. I think you get the point here. Just show a few more screens. It's like if I want to get that column of text, I can get there, but how many of you would put up with this? I think a lot of people would just bail. And so we'll go back to the PowerPoint slides now. So over those intervening years, our team is growing. So the one managing editor is now a team of 4. We have a sister team called Periodicals. And it's led by an executive editor. And we had worked together to redesign the university's news center, which is connected to our homepage. This is our daily publication. This is where a lot of our news happens. And it's a source of a lot of the material you read in the magazine. They'll take 6 months worth of news and kind of repurpose a lot of that for the magazine in addition to the features. We had worked with that team to redesign News Center, so they knew our work, and they started bugging me about a redesign. And so they did what a lot of people in this position do. They started showing me other websites that they liked. John Hopkins magazine was one of them. So we'll go out there. This is a nice website. I'll go back to spring 2015 because that's when we started talking about this. It's a nice design. It lets the photos and the stories come out front. My team liked this one because it's very simple. This navigation kind of gets out of your way until you need it, and it lets the stories come forward. Now, what I'm going to do here, rather than flipping it back between the phone and the big screen, because that would take too much time, I'm going to use Google's developer tools, an emulator, to show what this same website, this is a phone emulator right here. We're on iPhone 6, but I could pick a Samsung Nexus if I wanted to, or any of the popular phones today. You can do this at home too if you got Google Chrome. This is emulating a fingertip here. So you can see how this design works out on the phone. It's very nice. We'll just kind of surf around it a little bit. So that was one they were showing me. And then they do, if you really want to irritate somebody that works at a UT institution, what you do is you show them another UT institution and say, hey, look how these guys are doing it. So that little campus down I-30, they're showing me, look at UT Arlington's magazine, Cary. It's so nice. I'm like, really? Let me see. So I click around it. This is the spring 2015 edition, and they did a nice job. Just kind of scroll through a few pages here. Let me go back to Speed Racer. This was their cover feature for their magazine. And this got a lot of oohs and ahs. They really wanted to do something like this. They wanted to embed video. Can we do this here, Cary? Sure. Let's think about what resources it's going to take, but anything's possible. And so that strategy really worked. Oh, I should show the mobile view. So really nice job on the mobile interface, much better user experience than ours. And we like to pretend like we're not competitive with our sister institutions, but we are. Catherine Hopper is now, remember that web content editor I told you I had? She's it now. We kind of poached her. Maybe in part because of this project. She was really close to the magazine, and they did a good job. So, what else? We got those two. They also asked me for a blog. They wanted to do a blog, and our executive editor had actually come from the Morning News, and she pointed to the Dallas Morning News education blog, which I can't show you. It doesn't exist in the same form today, but it had several features that they wanted. They wanted to be able to embed slideshows. They wanted to be able to embed video. And something that we hadn't really seen up to that point was embedding social media. They wanted to be able to embed tweets. And they asked me if it's possible. And I said, I'm sure it is, but we actually didn't support blogging in our communications division at the time. So I said, we'll have to look into that. And so the periodicals team were the major stakeholders. They were the ones asking for the project. My team was also a stakeholder. They agreed with everything that the periodicals folks were saying, and they were saying, yes, Cary, we need to do this. We need to do this. We were just trying to figure out when. 2015 was a very busy year for us, so we were trying to figure out when we could start on it. And really, the quality of the magazine you're holding is very high, and I didn't want to take this project on unless I could do it very well, and I wanted to make sure that we were going to be able to do it very well. So, what did I go to? Oh, so the old favorite PMI, project management triangle. We'll talk about this. We'll kind of talk about how we do projects inside the university. So, we were thinking about the constraints on this project, and we didn't have money for the project to redesign it, but we didn't really want money. Everybody inside was sufficiently committed to doing it. We wanted to do the project in-house, so we didn't really want to go ask for money. The cost that I was more concerned about was the 50 pages coming out every 6 months. That implied we were going to be building 50 web pages every 6 months if we did this in-house. In 2015, we were just paying a vendor a few $1,000s. They were putting it up on the iPad, and we were done. We didn't have to, we changed one web page. Now we were going to be going to 50 twice a year. That was more of a concern. So I spoke to quality. We didn't sacrifice that one. So the one that got sacrificed was time. And my stakeholders in periodicals were asking, how long is this going to take? And in my typical fashion, I said, well, we're going to have to figure out what the requirements are. I'm not going to commit because I don't know exactly what we want to do yet. We got to sit down and talk about the requirements first, and then we can talk about how much time this is going to take. So we went into building the requirements. The first one was responsive design, which I was showing you. It's fluid design. It's design that works well on your phone. And I'm trying to think of a good example. I'm going to pick on one of our own websites that we're actually working with a school right now to redesign their website. You've probably come across this. This is a not responsive website. It does not respond to the size of your screen. The horizontal scroll bar is the worst thing in web design. People hate this. They absolutely hate it. So you've probably had this experience. Responsive design, doesn't matter what size screen you're on, big, small, the design will fit whatever. This one is responsive. So that was obvious. That was an easy requirement. Next one was the blog. And the blog, it might be surprising that we never supported blogging because we're an institutional communication division. So everything we publish is touched by at least 2 people. We didn't want to, with some limited exceptions, generally speaking, we did not want to put a feature out where any individual could post whatever they wanted under the UT Dallas logo. That would not be responsible institutional communications. Everything we do is reviewed by 2 people. But the executive editors wanted a blog. They wanted to be able to post news breaking fast. They were really trying to get, one of our goals here at the university, strategic initiative, strategic goal kind of things, is better relations with our alumni. And so they really want, they see that a lot of the 50,000 magazines that are printed go to alumni, and we're trying to get them more involved. They wanted a blog that could really kind of relate to that audience. And they wanted to be able to move quickly. And one of the things they kept saying to me over and over is, Cary, we don't want to burden your team. We want to be able to do this ourselves. Can we do it ourselves? Can you build us a content management so we can do it ourselves? And we'll do as much as we can, because we know you guys are busy. So that was appealing. I liked hearing that, because I didn't want to build all the pages every time somebody needed to move a comma or add a picture. So I started one of our web developers saying, hey, how can we support this request? And we'll talk about how that came out when we show the new one. Giving each story a URL of its own. This was a huge piece. This was a big problem with the Nextbook approach. And I'm really not railing on Nextbook. I think if you don't have anything, Nextbook is great. But in this case, this is tough. So let's say I want to feature, this is our Dean of Natural Sciences and Math. And this is not a feature story, but it's a nice little story. And our social media editor might want to post this on Facebook. Say this dean just arrived, he wants to post it on Facebook. He wants to be able to give a URL that you can link to. The problem is, if you give this URL, and to make the point, I'll go down to a smartphone size. The first thing that I don't even want to mess with that. Let me go back. The first thing that the reader is going to see is, oh boy, now I'm really in trouble. So you've got a link called, New Dean for Natural Sciences and Math. You click it. This is the first thing you see. Students mentor at risk. Maybe your eyeball goes here next. Then you go over here. You finally landed on the new dean. That is not good user interface. You want to be able to link directly to the story. And so this is one of the things we established early on. Every story should have its own URL for searchability, for linkability. Another problem was search. So this is a story about a few of our arts and technology graduates who founded a new game development company. And I just picked this one as an example. The name of the game development company is Interspace. It's a very nice little piece. You could probably link to this one and it would be okay, because this would be the first thing you see. One of the problems that we had was, let's say, I'll paint a scenario for you. Let's say an alumni gets this magazine and he's into game development, and he tells his buddy who's into game development, hey, did you know Interspace is founded by UTD grads? No, I didn't. Maybe his friend's looking for a job. And so he hears this. Maybe he doesn't have a copy of the magazine. But he knows Interspace, so he comes to our website looking for it. I'll try a couple of searches. So one of the problems we had was that a great article, this magazine article I'm showing you is not showing up. It's showing up in our student newspaper, but the magazine article I just showed you is not showing up. The reason for that is it wasn't running on our server. It's running on Nextbook's servers. And this content, the way it is, being in a proprietary format, Google can't find it. So we were missing a huge opportunity to make our content findable. So giving each story a URL of its own would help, and making each story in HTML. This one's probably obvious. It was to the team, but we needed to do everything in HTML, and that was going to take the burden from one page a semester to 50 or more. So figuring out how we were going to build all that HTML. HTML, we're going to solve these problems, but how we were going to build it was one of the chief concerns. The next one I already spoke about. The editors wanted to do as much as they could. They were asking for a content management system. This one was probably one of the biggest benefits. And the funny thing about it was we didn't realize it. Have you ever had one of those problems that just slowly gets worse over years and years? I've had dental problems like that. This download time had gotten really bad. And I hope I don't have this page cached. We'll see. I'm trying to pull up a page that I haven't been to. If it comes up really fast, then my example didn't work. So I'm going to load this page, and then I'm just going to be quiet and count. I'm going to count seconds. We're at 8. That was 11 seconds to download. The average for a long time was 8 seconds. 8 seconds was about the most time somebody would wait for a page before they would bail. There's now new research coming out saying mobile phone users are even less patient. It's 4 seconds. It's somewhere between 4 and 8. This one kind of surprised us because it had just been slowly getting worse. And we were actually seeing 10 or 15 seconds download time on some of these pages. And it was just, nobody was going to wait that long. One of the things that the periodicals team wanted to do, they wanted to be able to connect some of the magazine features to our homepage feature slider, but we weren't going to do it because that download time was so bad. So getting the download time, I started doing this in '99 when a lot of us were still on 56K modems. And so that lesson never went away. People, the overarching design, you think of design, you think of pretty colors and nice photos and nice page layouts, but the overarching design concern in web development is download time. It always has been. High-speed internet connections kind of made that problem go away, but in this case, we still had the problem. So getting that download time, and HTML was going to fix that too. Ability for readers to comment on stories. The editors wanted people to be able to comment. That instantly opened some questions, which I'll get into in a minute. Significant design changes every 6 months. So as we started thinking about this project and looking at some of the competitors who were doing it, John Hopkins and UTA among them, we realized that this was not like a lot of the projects we do. So a lot of the projects my team takes on at the university they're more task oriented, and I'm gonna pick on admissions. We redesigned our admissions websites 2 or 3 years ago, and a lot of energy went into these projects. They were what I'd call the red carpet redesign treatment. I'll just take a few minutes to show you around this one. This page shows we're not just all serious academics all the time. I like to show we have little bunny slippers. We have some fun here too, and some athletics. So this page, a lot of design energy went into this. It went through several revisions to get to it. That page has basically been the same for 3 years now. It's probably time to come take a look at it and maybe update it. But it didn't need to change. Same thing with most of the pages on this website. Once we design it, there's some maintenance that needs to happen on admissions. We change our admissions requirements from time to time, and we need to add content. That's relatively easy to do. With the magazine, we knew that we were going to have a new cover, and the cover is so important in magazines, and we were going to have all these new features and all these new photographs that we needed to deal with. So in my mind, I started thinking about this project like those Russian dolls. where there's a Russian doll inside the Russian doll, and we kind of had to design the outside one first, but then every 6 months we're going to have a new one coming in that's going to need to be designed. And that, we only have one designer on the team. So we really had to think about, what were we going to be able to commit to this? So those are all the requirements, I think. Yep, that's all the requirements. So we felt like we had a pretty good handle on them, and we started going into, I got to switch back to PowerPoint. We started going back into the decisions that needed to be made. So, and this is really the heart of my talk. This is where the user interface meets the requirements. All the requirements we're hearing from the stakeholders, I'm taking those back to the team, and they're starting to ask questions. So this slide, I'm going to kind of talk through these and share the questions that the developers were asking. And this is where me, as the project manager, I've really got to start pulling people together. And this is where we started the regular weekly or every 2-week meetings. I'm bringing the developers and the periodicals folks together. We can sit down at the table and talk. So I showed you the admissions website. And so thinking about the design that needed to change every 6 months, we started to talk about how we were going to do that. One of the tools we have that we use for this challenge is wireframing. And I hope I have the window loaded up here. Yes, I do. So wireframes are, so when we think about design in our department, we think about visual design, which is the graphics and the page layout and the photographs and what font we're going to use. We think about all those kind of things, but we're also thinking about interaction design. How's it going to click together? What's going to happen when the user clicks? What's going to happen when they hit the back button? What if they want to go down to this part? What if they want to get back? How's the navigation menu going to work? And we got to figure out how this works with a mouse or without. So wireframing is one of the tools we use to do that. It would help if I put it up on the screen here. I got to slide it over. Here we go. So wireframing is non-design design. It's kind of like pencil and paper. I guess it's like the modern day equivalent of pencil and paper. So this is pretty simple. We're going to put the UTD magazine logo up top. We've got some links over there on the left. We're going to put search here on the right. We'll put our feature stories. There's generally 4 features. You'll see those on the table of contents towards the front. We wanted to do those as big photographs, and we would give people the photo slider, which Vivek here manages the web presence for the Jindal School of Management and does a very good job, I might say. We were just talking about how trendy these are, how everybody wants one. And so we thought that was a way to go here. We started talking about how were we going to navigate to the old issues. Were we going to go back and do all old issues, and how were you going to get to them? We thought maybe a drop-down menu would be the way to go. Table of contents, this is the blog over here, so we're starting to think about how we would lay out things. This was the first wireframe we did. And so this was a discussion tool. I took this back to the editor, and we started talking about things like, what are we going to name the blog? And not alumni notes feed, but that's what we had at the time, so that's where we started. We thought letters to the editor might be something they wanted to feature. It turns out it wasn't. But this is a way that we kind of get it's a conversation starter. So then we'll go to the next iteration of these. It gets a little more fleshed out here. You can see we renamed the blog Alumni Buzz, which is not what it ended up being named. There's the drop down, 4 features. These 6 sections they pretty much matched the sections we had in the print magazine. One of the things we didn't know until we really started getting into this project was that our colleagues in marketing were planning a redesign to the print magazine. We found that out as we're designing, so that was kind of a surprise. We kind of thought we were base our decision-making on the product that existed, and turns out it was changing too, so that was a challenge. Here's how a blog might look. What we're showing here is a photo. These are lines of text, tags, sharing the post. And we're using this as a discussion tool to help us make decisions. And then we're showing it in mobile. How might this work on mobile? This is called the hamburger icon for menus. You've probably seen these. These have been around a long time, but they've come back again for mobile. I think they were designed in the 70s by Xerox, I want to say. But you didn't really see them on websites until smartphones came around. This is showing what the design might look like on a phone, with everything squished into a single column. And then one with the menu. This is the menu activated, so the user has tapped on it. And I'm taking this back to the executive editor. I'm saying, are these the categories you want? Are you sure these are the ones you want? Because we've got to lock those in. At some point, those get locked in, and they get very expensive to change. So let's see. I think I've showed you most of that. Okay. So, how did the design come out? And I will take you to today's website. This is the new magazine website that we launched in early June. And this is Dr. Benson. He's our new president. He started last summer, 2016. So he was our cover feature, as you've seen in your hand. And I'll take you through a few of the features, and you can see how they come out. This is a very nice illustration in that magazine. So then it's handed over to a web designer. And for the features, my team members are still producing those. So for all 4 features, we're handling those ourselves. This will kind of scroll you through and show we're taking advantage of that beautiful art. And on a big screen, we're scaling it up. On a small screen, we'll see how it plays out. Oops, I hit the wrong one. Sorry about that. Oh, no. Same pictures. We're still maximizing our width. We'll take all the width you have. If you turn your phone landscape, we'll make that picture bigger. There's a sidebar. So sidebars are something you could assume 10 years ago when you kind of knew, well, it's not really a sidebar. It's just a different shade on that piece. This is kind of like 3 features in one. How we translated the cover was a big piece. So much design energy goes into this, and a lot of stuff gets left on the cutting room floor, so to speak. So we knew we had a tough challenge in front of us coming up with something that was going to be good enough to make the creative director happy. Another design decision we had to make was the logo. So if you look at the printed magazine, the UT Dallas magazine logo has been the same since we launched it in 2010. It's distinct, it's unique for this publication. You'll notice the type on the word magazine is very thin. And I wish I had some of the old designs to show, because when we put that on the screen, you could barely read it. And so that was a concern. We also had a concern that the logo is kind of a block, and it was going to take up a lot of room on the phone. So at that point, we were mostly working with our periodicals team, but at that point, out of respect to the creative director and our marketing team who designed this magazine logo 7 years ago, we decided to pull them in and show them a presentation. And my approach was to not try to solve the problem, but to bring him into it first. And so we showed him the UT Dallas magazine logo as it was, and we showed the thin font was barely legible on some screens. And so one of the ideas we were talking about was making the word magazine bold. And I think we had some design prototypes that we showed. And to our surprise, the creative director said, well, why don't we just change it up? Why don't we make it more horizontal? And we were kind of surprised, because usually with a logo, you keep them steady from year to year. It's always the same. And he said, as long as we're using the same font and we respect the spirit of the original logo, I think that will really help you guys out. And it did. So on a phone, this ends up, if that was stacked, well, I guess it wouldn't have changed it that much, but it just looks a lot cleaner. And the word magazine is definitely legible in this view. So that was a decision that we spent some time on. So one of the requirements was the editors wanted to be able to embed their own video. And up to that point, this is one of our students. She's also a film star. She's featured here in the campus news section. They, up to this time, if they wanted to embed a video, they were pretty much calling my team to do it. And so I took this back to the team and said, can we set it up so they can embed the video? And they could. My team did not need to be involved.
So my name is Sasha Singh. Actually, it's Sasha Peshwani, but I go by...
Sorry, I didn't know it was going to come that loud. It won't let me change the volume. Well, we'll just let that be. So that was one of the requirements, was embedding their own video. So for most of the magazine, we were still trying to figure out how are we going to deal with these 52 pages of content? How are we going to produce all this HTML? And the periodicals team wanted to be able to do as much as they could. So we're still asking that question, and we still don't have the answer. This is the Business of Wine feature. This is one that my team is still developing. They're gonna handcraft this one, and they're handcrafting the features for the next one in HTML. These photos come over, and one of the things we have to do when they come over in CMYK, which is the base for printing. They come over cyan, magenta, yellow, and black are printing colors. This is not my world. My world is RGB. So when these pictures come over, they're too bright and they're saturated, and they didn't look right. And this man's cheeks looks very ruddy. We were commenting that they should look ruddy, but not that ruddy. So those photos have to be converted, and a good designer could spend an hour or two with that photo getting it just right. We had some fun with this one. Some of the decisions we had to make, and this one was fun to me. Let's see if I can find the feature. So we do all these nice illustrations and photographs. Which page am I on? Page 14. So one of the cool things on this page is a wine stain right here. And in the original design for this, we tried hanging that wine stain somewhere around here, and it didn't look right. It looked like a symbol for Lord of the Rings or something. And we were kind of picking on it in a team meeting. We're like, I don't know if that really works. Does that work, you guys? And then somebody said, well, you can't really set a wine glass on a screen. And we're like, okay, that's it. We're going to get rid of it. So that's an example of a decision we might want to make, but thoughtfully. We're not just going to willy-nilly make those decisions. We want to talk about them and try to retain everything we can, but it doesn't always work. So, okay. So now I want to talk about the blog. How did the blog come out? So this is the blog, and I'm going to pick the most recent blog post. I think this has come out wonderfully. One of the nice things we had was we use WordPress for content management. Anybody familiar with WordPress in here? Okay, we've got a few. I think it powers something like 25% of the world's websites. I told you at the beginning of the presentation that we hadn't really supported blogging up to that time. WordPress started life as a blogging engine. We had just turned all that blogging stuff off because we didn't want to support it as an institutional communication division. In this case, we were just going back and turning some of those things on. And this is an example of a post. My team has not been involved in this. The editors put this up. They put the picture up. I think it looks great. I want to show you, WordPress users will be familiar with this, but this is what the interface looks like for them. They're able to go in there. We've taught them a little HTML. That's a non-breaking space there. They can keep their headline from breaking on a smartphone. And it looks like Microsoft Word. These are not scary tools. My developers like this view. This is the code. And the editors, what's neat about this project, the editors have learned some HTML along the way. It's kind of been a two-way interaction. So this is a blog post that I'm showing you, but all the content for this website is run on WordPress. So the same engine that we're using for blogging is the same engine that we're using to reproduce a feature that was written for the printed one, and we're just importing it. And so the thing that I was really worried about turned out to be great. My team are handling the 4 features that have a lot of photographs and a lot of visual elements in it. The editing team is handling the other 48 pages. And there's really more than 48. Because if we take a spread like I showed you earlier where we had 4 stories on 2 pages, there's now 4 web pages there where there was 2. Anyway, they like it because they don't want to have, if they want to move a comma, for example, they don't want to have to call my team and say, Charles, will you move the comma? Charles says, yeah, I'm working on something for the president. I'll get to that in a little bit. And so maybe he says he's going to get to it in an hour. The editor checks an hour later. The comma isn't moved. They're calling Charles back. Yeah, I forgot. I'll move the comma. Then the editor's got to check it again. They want to be able to log in and fix that kind of thing themselves. So they actually like it. And it's working great. They're also able, did I pull this tab up? This is another place where this is a blog post, something that just happened. They did not call my team to put this post up. It's about a new tradition we have here with cardboard. And they took some great pictures. So one of their requirements was they wanted to be able to embed a slideshow. My answer was yes, we can do slideshows. I assumed that my team would have to be involved because we had been up to that point in actually putting the slideshow code together. WordPress gives us some kind of tool for that. And so the editors are able to put these slides together on their own now. And they do a great job. We'll see, I'm clicking an arrow there on your phone. It would work basically the same way. Okay, comments. This is an interesting area to me because the stakeholders, and I'm going to scroll through our presidential feature pretty quickly. Here's a sidebar. We can get away with a sidebar on a big screen. On a mobile device, you'll see that gets stacked into a single column. Taking advantage of the nice photograph. Maybe it was him with the ruddy cheeks. Dr. Benson he's a part-time photographer, and he asked us if we saw a way without tooting his photography horn too loudly, if we could embed his photographs. So it turns out he's got a pretty good eye with the camera. These are some of Dr. Benson's photographs. He came from Virginia Tech. That one's nice. So, that one's nice too. That was the one we ended on. So comments, we spent so much energy on this. And Vivek, you were asking me about this. When I took this one back to the web development team, they said, okay, do they want them to be moderated? Do they want anybody to be able to post a comment? I don't know. And if they do want them moderated, do they want them to be able to register? I don't know. And if they register, can we use Facebook so they don't have to create a new account? I don't know, let's talk. And so we got back with the editors. And I think the decision we arrived on was, yes, we want to moderate, but can we make it so that we don't have to moderate before it posts? Can we make it where we could go in and take something down if it was offensive? And so we researched that. Turns out we could. And so I polled the team this last week and asked them, has anybody commented yet? And I don't think we have any. And it's one of the editors on the team. I'm just going to look at one more just to see. So we spent a lot of energy. I looked at the discuss contract to make sure it wasn't going to get us in trouble with UT system, whether we needed to put it through a legal review. We were worried about ads, whether the software was going to put ads up, all kinds of concerns around that, and nobody's using it. And so the reason for that turns out to be, and support one of our other goals, which was, remember I told you we wanted to make linking into our features easy. One of the main reasons we wanted to do that was so that they could feature magazine material on social media. So it turns out this is where all the commenting's happening. This is a news story published a couple of weeks ago about our T-Mock socks. And we've got 75 comments here on Facebook. Turns out to be a very polarizing topic. Orange and green socks, who knew? So I'm now going back to that team. We're about to produce the second edition of the magazine. And I asked them if anybody's commented, and they don't think we've seen a single one. So we may be pulling this feature out, Vivek, if it helps you. We'll see what we're going to do with it. Because I don't think, and we even made it easy. We made it, you can log in with your Facebook account. If you're already logged into Facebook, it doesn't ask you again. It just takes you there. I mean, it's about as easy as it could be. But it turns out social media is where they want to do all the commenting. Things I wish I...
If you want them to comment, if you go to that post, the magazine post, go up at the top.
Uh-huh.
Up at the top. The first line before, you can put like social media share and a comment button that will take down there if you want them to comment.
Yeah.
That should be the first thing that
That's
they
one
see.
idea.
Because
I don't know.
they're not scrolling is what the problem is.
Yeah.
And so they're actually monitoring the Facebook site?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a Paul Battoni. He's one of the editors in periodicals. And there's a full-time web content editor who's dedicated to social media. He's got a couple of backups. So, yeah, they're watching them, and they have to deal with all kinds of stuff out there. So, things we wish we would have known ahead of time. How am I doing on time? Okay. Class notes was another interesting area. Oh, I'm sorry, I pulled the wrong one up. So class notes, you've probably seen this in the back of your alumni magazine. You've got something, this is how our class notes came out, but this is what I wanted. You got the 2010s, you got the by the decades, and I want to see, you know, what happened in the 90s, because that's when I graduated. And I actually went to high school with this guy, and I learned it from our new website. So it worked. So there was a lot of discussion around this topic, because one of the questions was, do you guys want to keep updating it in between editions? Do you want to update it all the time? Question back there.
Were we supposed to get a copy of the magazine?
Yeah, I only had 22. So I've got a couple more. I can give you one after. Sure. I went searching because they told me there could be up to 80 people here, and that is one of the last ones. I have one more if anybody wants one afterwards. Okay. That's good. We want them out there. So the editors and periodicals, they were really worried about searchability. They said one of the people love to Google themselves. And I'm going to pick on my high school buddy there. People love to Google themselves, and we want them to show up. So are they going to show up, Cary? And I said, yes, Google will pick them up. But can we make that the only thing that shows up? Because we don't want them to see this first. I said, well, now you're talking about me building a search engine. That's you know, I'm not Google. I can use Google's tools. So that was one of the discussions we had. Another one of the discussions we had was what happens when the new class notes comes out? Do you want to archive this one when we come out with the fall one? Or do you want the page to keep growing? They decided they wanted to do it per edition, so we're about to replace this one. The other thing that factored into that decision was our friends in alumni relations keep a database of class notes. And these class notes, they're kind of buried. Let me see if I can find them. Contact us, share your news. No, it's here somewhere. Alumni notes. Probably shouldn't be that hard to find. Did I click it? Yes. So this is alumni notes. They use a software system that has a database, and they keep all these class notes. So they're already entering them. And so the question was, can we interface with that product and just pull the class notes? Because they're already retyping, so these notes, somebody's typing these notes into that database. They're being retyped for the printed magazine you're holding. And so now the question we're asking, do we retype them a third time? Or can we use this database? So we really looked to see if we could integrate with that database. Turns out that database doesn't support pictures. And pictures was something they really wanted. And it adds a whole lot. It adds a lot. And you put the two side by side. And that was one of those decisions where we said, man, you know, it seems ridiculous retyping these class notes 3 times, but it's worth it to us because the pictures add so much visual interest. So that was the discussion on class notes. Okay. So those are really the kind of the highlights of the decisions we made. I thought I'd talk for a few minutes about timeline because it never goes like you think. So they started asking me if we could have a new magazine in 2015. We were really busy that year. And then we got into 2016, and I figured out we're at the point where we can do this. And so we initiated the project in June 2016, start sitting down with the periodicals team and really fleshing those requirements out in July. And pretty excited about it. And we started designing that first wireframe I showed you. We designed that one. And then I got my first surprise. Our designer departed. And so we had just turned the whole project over to her. And she took another job. So that was a stall. That one turned out to be not so bad because I had another designer that I had hired in 2010 who left me for another department at the university. And I kind of thought I could get her back. And we did. Her name's Serena. And we hired her in October. So we were only 2 months without a web designer. And so she comes on and we tell her this is going to be your first project and you're going to have to hit the ground running on this one. So we picked the project up, and then I get my next surprise. My executive editor colleague in periodicals takes a job at the University of Pittsburgh. And I'm like, man. At this point, and the funny thing was, as she's leaving, she says to me, Cary, you got to promise me you'll keep this magazine project going because we got to do it. It's so good. And my response is, really? As you're walking out the door, you want me to finish this for you? You're my partner in this. At that point, I really was skeptical that we would keep the project going because there were a lot of decisions to be made. All those decisions I just went through with you, she was going to have to make a lot of them because a lot of the labor was coming from her team. And so we just all kind of hung our heads and we didn't talk about it for about a month. And then, so there was the other thing that was going on then was that we were having a budget squeeze. So we had a budget cut imposed on our department that resulted in several positions being frozen. Hers was one of them. So when she left, her position was not going to be able to be filled. And that was one of the reasons I was really skeptical. So now, where there was 4 editors, there's only 3, and they've they got to do the work of 4 or get it down to 3. And so I wasn't going to be the one to bring this project up, and I didn't. But the managing editor, who was filling in for her former boss, the managing editor of the magazine, we were talking in conversation, and she says, "Cary, what about the magazine project? What do you think? You think we can do it?" And I told her, I said, "We've got a lot of decisions to make. There was a lot of decisions that I needed Cameron to make. And if you want to sit down and talk, I'll kind of go through those with you, and you can tell me what you think." And so we sat down for an hour, and we talked. And she said, "Yeah, I think we can do it, and I think we should." And so despite the obstacles, despite the executive editor leaving, we decided we were a smaller team, and we all knew, we were already thinking through all these obstacles we had to deal with anyway, and now it was going to be even harder. But everybody at that point they were pretty committed, and they still the size of our team hadn't changed, so my team is no difference to them. It was really the periodicals team that was going to fill the impact. So we get through all those decisions. February 2017, we've got a 2-person team going full blast, as motivated as they can be. March 31st was a progress check meeting, and this was where we were going to determine whether we were going to launch or not. And I believe we were talking about late May, definitely after graduation. And out of that meeting, we decided to set a launch date of June 14th. And my next surprise coming up was that Serena, our designer, was pregnant. And so and my only designer, I'll mention again, her due date was June 13th. And so I was up against that, and it's like now or never kind of deal. So April and May, we just go for it. We get into final coding, we start previewing it with the campus, start getting into our quality testing and our bug fixes. And we're assuming that Serena and Charles, they're the 2-person web team, that they're going to be there to get it to launch. For the most part, we knew Serena might have to go have the baby, but our plan included that, of course, until the next surprise came, June 2nd. She left 2 weeks early. Her little girl decided to come early, and so we were like, everybody's ready to pull their hair out. But I asked Charles, because Charles was the guy left holding the whole project. I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "I think she did enough design. I think we could do it. We might have to pull in some graphic designers from marketing who really don't know interactive that well, but I think we can do it." And so despite the obstacles, we launched on June 12th. And so that was the human component on the project. Always got those to deal with. So last couple of slides, and then I can take some questions. Results from the magazine launch has been very well received. So this is a web analytics pool from mid-June of 16 to mid-November, and the orange numbers are last year, and the blue numbers are this year. And so we've got what do we got? Our visits are up 373%. Page views are up 473%, those are tremendous. They're great numbers. The next one was really, really a cool one and kind of unexpected. So on our website as a whole, we've been watching the shift to mobile devices for several years. On the UT Dallas website as a whole, about 1 in 5 visits is coming on a smartphone, depending on the website. If it's undergraduate admissions, more of a teenager audience, the numbers are closer to 1 in 3. So this next analytics pool was kind of a surpriser. This is that same time period, and this is the only time in my time here where we've seen mobile phones on top. Our usage of mobile phones is 58% of the total. And we're still getting a good chunk on traditional computers. Those tablets we were worried about, they still get a little bit of use, but nowhere near as much as computers and smartphones. And Windows is still dominant, for the website as a whole, but here this is really interesting statistic. So I think that concludes the planned part of my presentation, and we'd be happy to take some questions.
I've got a mic here for you. It's for the benefit of the video
for the
recording.
video recording, we want to try and get all the questions on the microphone.
Yeah, your computer science department or media department, they probably have resources or courses that teach some of these things, right, on an ongoing basis, and they keep up with the new technologies that go into these kind of projects. So were you able to leverage some of those departments?
We do. We have the closest thing in our university is probably arts and technology, which is our newest school, the arts and technology degree. They have a class, I'm not sure I'll remember the name of it. It's design, it may just be called Design 1 and Design 2. They teach a lot of the basics of interaction design there. And so one of the things we do is usability testing, where we want to see if a website's effective. Like take our admissions website, for example, we'll say, see if you can find the estimated cost. See if you can find Vivek's phone number. See if you can find the address of the university. See what 12 hours of classes cost, and then we'll sit back and watch and see if they can do it. So we'll go to those classes and we'll borrow some of their students for a class, and we get a lot of feedback that way. That's one of the ways we interact with the student community. But we'll reach out to student government for the same kind of questions. I think our computer science department does teach some more of the computer science behind displays. I'm trying to think. Vivek, do you know? You guys teach some. You teach some.
I teach web design and PHP, MySQL stuff. Yeah. But for leveraging some of those resources, it's a lot about timeline, and we, as a university as a whole, we don't have those technical resources for web design or responsive design. It's usability and user experience design. And I also manage a department here with James works with me, and we kind of have to have our own research department as well, and see where things are going and move our university website. So whenever we get a project, it needs to be done yesterday is the thing, and it's similar to any project. So leveraging and going to the right people and finding them is hard as well. So we kind of have to do it in-house, within ourselves.
I don't know if you've noticed this, Vivek, but one of the trends I've noticed is in the 90s, if you wanted to learn web development, you had to teach yourself HTML, you had to teach yourself FTP for moving files around a web server. A lot of these tools today, like WordPress and Wix, they've made publishing websites so easy that the kids aren't having to teach themselves these languages anymore. So thankfully, there's people like Vivek and Arts and Technology that are teaching, but a lot of the times the students they're not advanced enough yet to be able to do this kind of development. But we do pull them in. We like to hire students too. We do continuously have student employees on the team. Another question.
Yeah, I was wondering, so when you're creating the online version of the magazine, is that like in parallel with creating the printed version itself, or is it
Yeah.
created all online and then printed off, or?
That's an interesting question because it's changing. This project is changing the timeline they use. So it's still primarily driven by the print. So this is a good time to ask too, and we're going to get to see how all this works out. So we're working on the new edition right now, and the periodicals team is planning for that to start hitting mailboxes the week after Thanksgiving. And so we want to have the website up about the time it's coming in the mailboxes. So early December, definitely by mid-December, and we we will get to see, I'm sorry, I picked the wrong tab there. We'll get to see how our design within a design works, because we'll have the whole new edition going up. For the most part, my team just got one big PDF from periodicals that has most of the magazine in it. And at this point, it's been approved by the president and the provost. The copy has, so we're not, they're pretty close to sending it to the printer. So, and one of the interesting dynamics there is my team doesn't want to get it too early, because if we get it too early, then we're dealing with a lot of corrections that might come in after the president reviews it and decides, I don't like that paragraph, take that paragraph out. Well, now we've got the paragraph on the HTML. So it's interesting because we want to wait as late as we can. In the other direction, there's the editors are starting to input content into the content management system because it's worked so well and they feel like they can rely on it. They're starting to put the class notes in. Class notes might be an example of where it's changed. They're putting the class notes in as they come in. So they've been working on those for 6 months. They haven't published them yet, but they're sitting there in that content management system. So there's an example where it's working the other way. Now they'll take the class notes out of the digital edition and give it back to the print designers. So, and the blog is totally new. I don't know how they're dealing with that in the magazine, actually. We'll see how that comes out. Because those have been going for 6 months. They've been posting to that pretty regularly. So, still mostly driven by the print schedule, definitely for the features, but starting to be more of a two-way flow. I think we have one back there too after him. Go ahead.
Okay. So I love the design. I loved how clean it is. And you said it's going to change every 6 months. Are you talking about the content or?
Well, what I meant was, with a website like admissions, the design stays pretty steady.
Yes.
I think this is true for your website too. We have, we might change these photos, but this design here hasn't changed for 6 months.
Uh-huh.
The risk we're taking here is, let me go back to the front, is that in this edition, this blue grid is the background for the logo and the white navigation. I don't know what the next feature is going to be. I don't know if it's going to be all black or...
my question is, like, let's say the new magazine comes once a year, once a semester, twice a year.
Every 6 months.
So you will change just the look and feel, but the structure of the site will remain the same.
Right.
And based on the new version. Now, my question is, like, how much do you plan to change the overall structure? Is there any? You showed us some of the analytics, but is there any strategy that to decide that you chose for 4 feature stories there, blog on the right-hand side, and some stories right down there, but nobody's clicking on them? Is there any strategy to change that in the future, or based on the number of clicks or the number of visits, or?
Not too much. We're going to watch that. We're going to have a conversation about comments. I think these sections will stay pretty steady. Now, if the new magazine is on white, I might be changing these to black. That might be one design change. For the most part, I don't expect the structure is going to change too much until the 50th anniversary. At the 50th anniversary, the magazine will be a key way. And if you look at some of those earlier wireframes, I think you might have seen we had some 50th anniversary elements built in there. 2019 will be our 50th anniversary. So at that point, you might see the design change to showcase our 50-year celebration. Those are the only ones I can think of.
Do you know who are the users?
The users, we don't know. We know how many.
No, I mean, who are the users who are going to the site?
We don't really have a way of knowing. We know how many people are coming. We know the ways they're coming.
So it's social media mostly?
I think that mobile number, that 58%, is coming from social media. So friends posting things like we saw on Facebook. So we can, our web trends analytics, we can get down to an IP address, but we don't really know if that's a teenager or their parent behind the computer.
Do you send emails
We're about to, we're going to feature, and that's something we haven't done before, we're going to feature the magazine as like we're going to put out an email with the first edition. So, I mean, this will be the second edition. So we're designing that right now, that we're talking about sending campus-wide and to alumni, if our friends in alumni relations like the idea.
Okay. Thank you.
So I think we have, she, right here with the three, has been waiting for a little while.
I'm just curious on how you're managing the blogging, or who owns that? Does the periodicals team own that?
Yep.
Okay, so they own that, and then they're the ones that are choosing the subjects and controlling the users that are able to blog?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a pretty limited group of people.
And then is that team also owning the moderation of the Facebook, or is that within your team?
They work closely together, so the social media is actually located in our public relations, media relations department.
Okay,
But they actually, Paul Battoni, who's one of the editors that posted that Facebook post I showed earlier, they actually sit right next to each other. And Paul is his backup. So we have a full-time web content editor who does social media, mostly focusing on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and kind of keeping an eye on the other ones. And then Paul is his backup. So those two are talking all the time. And
okay. I was just curious as how you guys had set that up. Thank you.
sure.
We have one back here.
Thank you very much for the look under the hood. That was really helpful.
Oh, thank you.
And the work that went into making the magazine possible. My question is more around lessons learned. You had mentioned resource constraints, and if you were to summarize the challenges that you've encountered, you mentioned also WordPress. I would imagine that there would be some security challenges with that solution because it's notorious for having flaws, as well as the architecture. Like all in all, if you were to summarize your lessons learned for use cases and misuse cases, if you will.
Lessons learned, that's a great question. We're having a meeting of the same team Monday, and this would probably be a much better answer after we have that team, after we have that meeting, because we haven't met since we launched. I'm trying to think. I'm sure there are some. I may have to come back to this question. I think one of your questions was about WordPress and the security risks. We put WordPress in probably 6 or 7 years ago, and at the time, our information security department was really opposed to it. So our WordPress setup here is a little bit different. We put WordPress behind the firewall, and you can't get to it from outside the university. And we wrote a system we call Staticizer. It takes WordPress's posts and turns them into static HTML, and then it puts them on the web server. So the WordPress server, it could be hacked from inside the network, and there's plenty of people inside our campus network, but it's not reachable. That was one of the things we did to make our information security people happy. We keep it patched all the time. I feel like we're constantly patching WordPress every couple of weeks. So there's a lot of maintenance and keeping up with that. That answers one of your questions. Don't worry about comments so much would be one lesson, because people aren't really doing this anymore. They're using social media for that kind of thing. I don't know. I may have some more after my mind simmers on that one. Or you might email me after my Monday team meeting, because I'll probably hear an earful then. Others? All right.
That's it? Okay. Well, I guess we're done. Thank you very much, Cary.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time. Happy Thanksgiving.
Great job.